They say let go, you gotta move on. Oh, oh, oh.
And with.
They say let go, you gotta move on. Oh, oh, oh.
Hey, what's going on out there? I'm Sean Devine. Hope you all are doing well. Today we're taking a look at the V-Series plugins, specifically 3 different plugins that I'm using in a vocal chain. We've got 2 EQs, so the V-EQ3, the V-EQ4, and the compressor we're using is the V-Comp. So what is the V-Series really all about? The V stands for Vintage Vibe. It's going to give you a warmer, fatter, classic tone for either your vocals or all your other instrumentation. The V-Comp can be used as a vocal compressor or a bus compressor if you want to use it that way. So a lot of different options there for getting a warmer sound. And we've got some analog settings. These are not just adding noise. They are adding some noise, but they're also adding some subtle characteristics of the hardware units, the vintage hardware that these are based off of, these plugins are based off of. So you're going to get some harmonic distortion and some things that you can't get anywhere else. It's only in the V-Series. So a lot of cool things under the hood here. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to show you exactly how I'm using each of the plugins in this chain. All right, so I've got my vocal chain open for a couple of these different hook layers. I have the V-Comp, the V-EQ3, and then that is followed by the V-EQ4. Each of these doing some cool things in terms of the vocal processing. But I'm going to disable these right now. I'm going to play back the vocal here, and then I'm going to play it back with all of the V-Series, and then we're going to talk individually about what's going on in each of the plugins so that you can understand what these are capable of doing. So here we go.
They say let go, you gotta move on. Oh, oh, oh. 'Cause it's getting hard to breathe. Some of the words for me. Tell me like it is, 'cause I want us to rise before we fall. It's out of my hands. It's out of my hands, yeah, yeah, yeah. They say let go, you gotta move on. Oh, oh, oh. 'Cause it's getting hard to breathe. Some of the words for me. Tell me like it is, 'cause I want us to rise before we fall. It's out of my hands. It's out of my hands, yeah, yeah, yeah.
There are some subtle things that, some analog magic, if you will, that the V-Series added once we activated those plugins. However, there were some more obvious things that you probably picked up on immediately. One being we had a really nice high-end sheen or presence without being really harsh. So it helped the vocal to sit on top of the beat better. And then we also had some glue that was introduced by the V-Comp. A lot of those layers started meshing together a lot more. And then we got some subtle harmonics and saturation by adding this analog feature here on the V-Comp. And then finally, we did some mid-frequency and high mid-frequency boosts, as well as a high pass just at 50 to get rid of some low rumble. But I still wanted to hold on to some of the warmth down there in the vocal. But let's just break down first the V-Comp. Some of the settings I've got here, you could see that I'm on a 3-to-1 ratio, which we had some pretty heavy gain reduction up here on this meter. We can change that to monitor the input levels, the output levels, but I like to keep it on the gain reduction so we can see how much compression we're getting. I am running multiple layers in the vocal to this, so it might seem like a lot of compression to some of you, but just realize that it's not just one vocal layer that we're processing. I've got a fast attack, and then we're doing about an 800 millisecond release, not utilizing the de-esser or the limiter. However, if you want to turn the limiter on, this is just going to keep you again below this threshold, and you can have a little bit safer gain staging in terms of your vocal chain if you want to utilize that. However, I'm pushing things pretty heavily at this point, as we like to do at times in our vocal chains. So moving on to the EQ sections, again, we had that 50 hertz roll off, and then I've got this nice mid-frequency boost. We got about 4 dB at about 700 hertz, and we've got the analog activated again. So let me just turn off the V-EQ4 for now, and let's just focus on the V-EQ3. Let me solo the vocal.
They say let go, you gotta move on. Oh, oh, oh.
And with.
They say let go, you gotta move on. Oh, oh, oh.
So we got rid of a lot of the mud, the murk, and then we added this really musical mid-frequency boost there. Sounds really cool in the context of the mix. So then moving on to the V-EQ4, arguably one of the most important processes in the vocal chain is whatever this high frequency boost that we do, not all EQs are created equally. So there's a reason why I would choose something like the V-EQ4 to do this boost is because it's going to be musical. And like we talked about earlier, it's not just going to take your head off in terms of being really harsh.
They say let go, you gotta move on. Oh, oh, oh.
And then with?
They say let go, you gotta move on. Oh, oh, oh.
So we get this really nice crisp air on top with about a 5 dB boost up there at 15K. So that sounds really high, but with the understanding that these EQs have very unique curves. So even though we're at 15K, that curve is dipping down and it's touching more, towards the 10K and even a little bit below that as we're boosting. So really cool, unique curves in these EQs. We're also doing just a half dB at about 1.5K. And then finally, we're doing about 1.5 dB boost at 560 to give us a little bit of low mid boost. And all these together, again, they're just going to give you a warmer tone, a more pleasant vocal that sits better in the context of your mix. And for those of you out there with just these cold, harsh recordings that you're trying to get some of that vintage flavor, some of that analog flair, if you will, and some of the character that is included in a lot of these hardware units that are very sought after. That's what the V-Series is all about, is giving you some of that unique tone and just making sure that it's musical. That's the key, is we want all these different options we have at our disposal to be musical options. And the V-Series is definitely a musical processing plugin set. So hope this helps you get some silky smooth vintage style vocals. Thanks for watching.
They say let go, you gotta move on. Oh, oh, oh. Is this getting hard to breathe? Some of the words